This episode and every episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show is brought to you by Ironmonger Brewing. Visit Ironmonger at their tap room in Marietta, Georgia, or online at ironmongerbrewing.com.
Open up a tab, grab a seat, and pour a pint. It's time for the Beer Guys Radio Show.
You want free beer? Go to the brewery.
Dedicated to the art, science, and enjoyment of craft beer.
Yeah, what's wrong with the beer we got?
Now, here are your hosts, Tim Dennis and Brian Hewitt.
And welcome to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We're broadcasting not from the Beer Guys Radio Studios this week, Brian. We are in the field. We are remote at Ironshield Brewing in Lawrenceville, Georgia. And this may surprise you, but we're going to be talking about Ironshield Brewing.
Wow.
How about that?
Yeah.
Good stuff. I am Tim Dennis, and with me as always is my good friend and co-host, Brian Hewitt.
Hey, Tim. Joining us today, we have Glen Sprouse, the president and brewmaster for Ironshield. We're going to talk about Hefeweizens, traditional styles, and Warhammers. Glenn, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. Glenn, the weather here is gorgeous today.
Yes.
A little cool, but we're getting on the later side of the day. But you've got quite a beer garden. We're in your beer garden right now, right?
Yep.
And
5,000 square feet, simple, wide open space, family friendly, pet friendly.
Right. And the traditional egg rolls in the beer garden today, correct?
You never know what you're going to get with the food trucks. It's always good, but it all goes with beer.
And a cigar tent over there, I noticed.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everything you need. I saw your LinkedIn profile picture. You got a cigar there.
That's my medication.
That's yes. Yeah. I haven't had a cigar in a long time. Brian, you still get them every now and then, right?
I usually smoke one on the way back from the studio every evening. And yeah, pretty much. I get them in occasionally. A little harder now. It's difficult to find a place where you can comfortably smoke a cigar these days. It really has become a challenge.
Yeah. But the beer garden, the patio, we're in that sweet spot here in Georgia right now. It's cool. It's warm enough to be out, cool enough to be comfortable. Pollen season hasn't hit us yet.
Not quite.
And the summer burn hasn't hit us yet. So you got to take advantage of the patios and beer gardens, while you can here.
We got like a week of this, maybe, or is it
Maybe
2
a
weeks?
little
Is
bit,
that about how much we get?
I think pollen is coming really soon.
Yeah,
we won't miss out on that.
We'll definitely see it. It'll be yellow or green everywhere. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
I look forward to it.
But we've got, I'm sipping a Hefeweizen, which we're getting a preview right now. It's going to be releasing, actually, as you're listening to this show, is the release party.
March the 26th.
So there you go. Get out, enjoy it, have a good, but it's fantastic. Hefeweizen, classic beer. Simple stuff. And that's kind of the focus here at Ironshield, right?
What we do is, the way we like to refer to it is we see ourselves as the classical musicians of the beer world. We don't do the 3-chord rock and roll. We're good at IPAs, but that's a big market that's got plenty of players in it. And what a lot of people have lost over the years is a connection with the world classics. Beers that have been bestsellers for 350 years.
Right. Yeah, if it's selling that long and still popular, they must be doing something right.
There must be something to it, for sure. So is it, when you think classic styles, or when you talk about classic styles, are you mostly thinking German, or do you expand beyond that?
We do mostly Germans, Belgians, and some Irish beers.
Okay.
Our lead brewer, Jason Carroll, is from Cork. Jason spent 4 years with Guinness. He was in their craft program. He started some really neat projects while he was there between Guinness and Jameson. He's extremely talented and very well educated. When he brews an Irish Red or when he brews a Nitro Stout, it is the traditional style that you're going to find that people over there see as their daily bread.
Right. That's, I was talking to a craft brewer from Ireland, and they were talking about like Guinness in a bar because they have the Irish laws. I don't know all of them, but I know that some of the brewers there own pubs, like chains of pubs. And he was saying that he has Guinness on tap there. And it's like, look, I understand, the macro versus craft and all this, but if you have a pub in Ireland and you don't have Guinness on tap, you're not going to have a pub in Ireland.
Right.
They're like, just plain and simple. You've got to have it here.
So is that part of the conditions of his employment here, is that he wouldn't come on unless he could make some Irish styles?
He probably wouldn't have come on if I didn't let him make some Irish styles.
Yeah.
And I very much appreciate it. I've got a lot of formulations that I have put together and brewed and sold over the last 26 years. And what Jason brought is some freshness to it, but not freshness as in way, way out there. No Skittles, no donuts. but just really some classic styles that people appreciate in places like Ireland and what we call across the pond that folks here really either haven't gotten fresh, or if they've enjoyed it in their travels, and when they came home couldn't find it anywhere.
Right. Now, you said you don't brew any, no Skittles, no donuts. Would that go for your drinking as well?
There's an occasional beer that I find interesting. The occasional pastry stout I'll enjoy. I appreciate some really good European beers that we here would call sours, but most of the domestic sours I'm not that crazy about because to me they're just too sour. So, I do like to try different styles. I'm not a beer snob, but I think sometimes people try real hard to do something nobody's done yet rather than do something better. And we're all about doing something better.
What's the saying? You were too concentrated on whether or not you could to focus on whether or not you should do it, or something along those lines?
Yeah, I get the feeling like a fair number of breweries have done something like that. One made with hot dog water or something like that.
Just crazy
that really
stuff.
applies.
This is coming from the guy who wanted to do a seafood ghost. I'm just going to say that real quick. So.
Speaking of ghosts, and you speaking about the domestic sours being so sour, I thought it was interesting when we first got introduced to ghosts here in the U.S. at least in our part of the world, down here in the South, it was
Westbrook. Right?
Westbrook's really intense, really salty, really intensely sour goza, and it's really interesting how it's so extreme compared to later on. I tasted the other gozas. I'm like, this doesn't seem like a goza at all. I mean, I don't know how we got there. How did we do that? Maybe it's because we couldn't just do the traditional thing.
Well, remember what we did with IPAs back in the 90s when everybody was trying to break the IBU barrier.
IBU wars, 1,000 IBUs and such. So, talking about that with Westbrook, I had mentioned before, we've discussed it before, Brian, that especially here in the South, and I don't know if that applies anywhere else, but that set the bar for people. And like Leipziger Goza, it's nowhere near as bracing as Westbrook was, but that set people's palates for what a Goza should be. And I think I was talking to Jason Santa Maria at Second Self because they did Maverick and Goza over there, which the first time they put it out was very similar to a traditional like the Leipziger or something along those lines.
Love their mole porter, by the way.
You know what? People complain like crazy that thing wasn't sour enough.
Really?
The next time they do it, he's like, we had to bump it up a little bit because we were like, this is not sour enough.
It's a matter of expectations, but
sure.
Again, your expectations sometimes determine whether you're going to like something or not.
Right.
Traveling to Germany and having a real German goza, or going, to Belgium and having some of the classic Belgian sours. Almost all these sour beers that you find in Europe have one thing in common. The souring happened during fermentation, or it happened in aging. And most of the sours produced here in the craft industry are kettle sours. And that's why the souring is so much more intense. And there's nothing wrong with that if people like it. If you're brewing a beer that people really love, you keep brewing it, right? We always used to say, you don't determine your flagship beer. Your customers determine your flagship beer.
Exactly.
Sure.
And that, I know some brewers don't even quote unquote sour in the kettle. There's just a lactic acid component added to it to give that tartness there. It's not even. But again, I know one brewery, I won't call them out here because I don't think they broadcast it, but one of their most popular beers is a raspberry kettle sour. There's really no true souring going in there, I guess. Technically, is it Glen is adding lactic? Would that be counted souring there?
Lactic acid?
No, if you're not souring through fermentation,
right?
It's an addition. It's a flavor addition that you do in the bright tank. The question is, does the customer care? If the customer likes it, that's one thing. Standing on tradition is good if it gets you something. If you actually are raising the quality of your discipline,
right? Doesn't matter if the customer enjoys it, unless you're putting, something harmful in there. Doesn't matter, I guess, right?
Right.
Well, Tim, I think we're running short on time. We need to get into the beers of the week.
We get to talking, Brian. It just goes and goes. Beers of the week. We want to thank our friends at The Nest for sponsoring this segment. Craft beer, barbecue, chicken wings. Keep an eye on them to see the latest on the Chicken Wing Index. And go over there, grab a beer, grab a bite. This week, we're featuring Ironshield beers. We are right now, as we mentioned earlier, we're drinking their Lorelei Hefeweizen. We are going to get into the Seven Sisters, and that was that's your
we call
Vienna
it a Munchner,
lager, right?
But it's a Vienna style
lager, and also the Carnival Kolsch. So we're going to try all those out, Brian, and see what's up.
Excellent.
All good classic beers, man.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I like the classic styles, man.
It's good stuff.
I do.
You are listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take a break. but we'll be back right after this. Have you visited Ironmonger Brewing recently? Take a trip and see the newly renovated and spacious tap room, or enjoy the outdoors in their new beer garden with plenty of seating and shade to ease that summer sun. Ironmonger's tap room has a variety of craft beer and hard seltzer on tap, with wine and spirits coming soon. Ready for a bit of adventure? Try out axe throwing with Ironmonger's 16 target range. It's a perfect spot for some quick fun or to host your next party or corporate event. So grab your friends and have some fun today at Ironmonger Brewing.
Have you ever thought about owning your own brewery but don't know what it takes to get one built? We're Storytime Construction, and we build breweries. We're Georgia's most experienced and hands-on contractors when it comes to building new breweries and tap rooms, or expanding existing breweries. We offer full build-outs, remodeling, and additions, as well as consulting and construction management. Give us a call at 770-733-4343. Storytime Construction. We build breweries.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Your revolution is over, Mr. Lebowski. Condolences, the bum's lost.
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. Remember, all episodes are available on demand, so if you missed the broadcast, get the podcast. Beer Guys Radio is available on the Podcast Park and all popular and unpopular podcasting apps. Now let's get back to Ironshield Brewing.
Glenn, we want to talk to you some about your background here, because Ironshield not your first rodeo, as they say. You've been, I believe you were involved with a brew pub we were big fans of here for a while. You kicked off 5 seasons, is that correct?
I did, and before that, Phoenix Brewing Company.
With Phoenix, that's right.
Yes,
okay,
yes.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, and that's going back to go back even further there. You actually helped write and pass the brew pub legislation in the state of Georgia, correct?
Oh, yeah. Dark days. Dark days.
Man, crazy. That's, I don't think people think, and that was 24, 25 years ago, maybe? When did they?
More than that. We started working on it in like 91, 92.
Okay.
Took us 4 years to get it passed. And then I went from being an engineer and a lobbyist to going to brew school and then coming back and building the first brewery, Phoenix, in the Prado, where the first 5 seasons also started.
Right. Okay.
3 years later.
Now, when was Phoenix there? Because I think I may have got to Atlanta maybe right as the transition was happening.
Opened March 1st, 1996.
Okay. So I moved here June 2000.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I
5
think
seasons was already there and in
the
full
5
swing.
seasons. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but 5 seasons brewing, Crawford and Moran as well. We know Crawford, and we enjoyed Oktoberfest. We always used to enjoy going there for Oktoberfest, but the beer laws have just been brutal. And like you said, it took you 4 years to get this done.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like with changing beer laws, and we talk about that a good bit. We want people to understand when you hear a beer law come up, support it. If you believe in it, support it, because minor changes. And one thing we had in Georgia this year, we had a bill up to allow more direct sales from your breweries. We're capped at 288 ounces now, and I don't believe it crossed over. So, it's this little teeny tiny change here, which was allowing brewers to donate to events, to nonprofits.
Correct.
And removing the 288 ounce cap. These are 2 minor changes that went nothing, so there's a whole year lost on this.
Yep.
And beer law changes are incremental. You never get you don't change everything at once. So that means at least another year to get a tiny change, and that puts you behind on the next change that you want there.
It's like taking down a wall 1 brick at a time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you said...
and you got to take a year break between every brick, right?
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said it didn't cross over, and I'm thinking that might be slang that people don't understand, but it was like stuck in committee so long that it could not pass, could not actually get to a vote.
There's a crossover day that if it isn't out, and I may get this, Glenn, you could probably clarify there, crossover day, what's the significance there?
Well, you've got 2 or 3 things that happen, and there's more than one path that a law can go to get passed. If they stick it in a committee, sometimes it's because it's got something relevant, and sometimes they stick it in a committee to go there and
bury it, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right.
But there's a limit because a law has to pass both the House and the Senate. And so you don't have many days because, as you know, our state legislature only works about 3 months out of the year, and everything's done in March. So there's a practical limit for it to cross over so that it can get voted on in both House and Senate.
make it through everything there. So yeah,
indeed,
another year for little bitty changes, man.
Well, something else that is on my mind here. You do a fair amount of contract brewing. We don't talk to a lot of people who do that. Like what percentage would you say of the beers you brew here are yours, and what percentage are contract brewing?
Well, either sadly or luckily, right now, about 90% of the volume that goes out the door is contract production. We built at scale.
Okay.
And we're growing the contract business. The business is designed to grow incrementally in volume. We just keep dropping in tanks, but we already have a fully capable packaging area. We have a brew house that can put out at maximum capacity over 100,000 barrels a year. So the brew house is there. It can run 24/7 and crank out a ton of volume. As we grow our volume, we add tanks. And the contract drives the covering the costs, the overhead. It breaks even for us, and then we grow our own brand simultaneously. And that is a different business unit. We treat it like two different businesses. There's Ironshield and there's Big Kettle. But we're going to do close to 30,000 barrels a year this year in contract production, and we're hoping to push 3,000 with Big Kettle.
That's a lot of barrels. That's a lot. 30,000. That's a lot of barrels. I'm not sure what you can or want to talk about your customers on the contract side, but I'm pretty sure you do a non-alcoholic beer.
We do an NA beer, and that's one that we have NDA with everybody, but that's one that we kind of openly help market. The brand's called Right Side, and we do an IPA and a citrus sweet, and we use a much newer method of producing an NA beer. It's not one of the unfermented ones. We actually make a citrus sweet beer. We actually make an IPA, and then the alcohol is removed through a reverse osmosis process.
Okay. Interesting. And I've had the citrus sweet and really enjoyed that. You know, it
tastes like beer.
It delivered what you'd expect, a citrus sweet beer. You know, all the flavors were there.
Indeed.
Haven't tried the IPA yet, but are there any intentions to do that on the Ironshield side of the house?
Most likely not. There's a lot of extra steps and time and labor involved in taking and making a beer into an NA beer. And so it really kind of cuts into the profitability. The people that are doing this are doing it because they really believe in what they're doing, and they really believe in offering a product that fits a very, very important niche. But for us, you know, I'd be happy just to do the classics and grow that business and bring that to the people.
Sounds good. Do you contract brew for any other NA beers?
No, that's the only one that we do.
Now. Okay, gotcha.
So one thing that surprises me, and we've gone through it with Oktoberfest and every NA beer show that we've ever done since we're talking about that, is how long it's almost a traditional beer for Germany, at least. They've been in Europe, they've been brewing non-alcoholic beers for a surprisingly long period of time. And it's a fairly new thing for us. So technically, I mean, I know this doesn't sound like it was a consideration, but you could kind of consider it traditional at this point, couldn't you?
It is almost traditional. You know, the traditional way of doing it was called vacuum distillation. And of course, the Germans and everybody in Europe and here have been masters at distillation for centuries. So it was fairly easy to migrate to that point. What really drove it in Europe, though, was not what you would think. They went into non-alcoholic beers to benefit people with diabetes.
Okay.
Oh, all right.
And other health issues. They were trying to brew a more healthy beer for people who had health issues that needed to drink NA beers.
Okay. No,
it wasn't. So the fact that didn't want to drink alcohol wasn't so much, it wasn't the avoidance of the alcohol, but how the alcohol impacted other health.
It wasn't religious or moral,
right. Okay,
and it wasn't, you know, because somebody got a DUI and they had to go on the wagon. It was seriously, it was an attempt at providing a product that would fit someone's health concerns.
Okay, so not triathletes drinking. It is a little trendy now because athletic folks are into drinking non-alcoholic beers because it's not going to interfere with that. That's actually very very smart on their behalf. So yeah, that's great.
It's a growing market, very rapidly.
Yeah,
growing
we've
market.
seen a lot out there. So, but Glenn, I'm going to take just a little step back. More on your background. You're a Georgia Tech graduate, mechanical engineer. Mm-hmm. Do you know the Pete's over at Kettle Rock Brewing?
I know who they are. I haven't met them.
Okay, because Georgia Tech Brewers, man, I thought maybe you guys had a little Illuminati cult or something.
Don't forget
on.
Six Bridges now.
That's right. Oh, Six Bridges.
I think they mentioned them, yeah.
Second Self.
Second Self, Jason and his partner.
Yeah, both of them Georgia Tech alums. So a lot of Georgia Tech brewers in the
I'm sure they're aware. Like they seem to have a very sixth sense awareness of Georgia Tech.
They walk by this like they know.
I know. Yeah.
They know there. But with you used your mechanical engineering. We've seen several mechanical engineers or engineers in general that come into brewing. But you worked in brewing within engineering. You did automation and such, correct?
Did process automation for a few different breweries. a little bit each for the big three, and then a lot of process automation for a lot of the earlier craft breweries.
Was that in between Phoenix 5 seasons here?
It kind of started when I designed and built the brewery for Phoenix.
Okay.
And then I was dragged back into automation when I got into brewing, and the OEMs that build equipment here in the country found out there was somebody that did design and automation work.
That's pretty impressive. In my day job, we have an engineering division that does a lot with, process automation and that. I personally don't know much about it, but
I really don't either.
We work with it. Interesting stuff there. But you know what? I'm going to finish my Hefeweizen. We're going to take a break here in just a minute. Y'all, we want to say welcome back. Welcome back to Zach.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Zach.
So you guys may remember Zach, our sound guy back in the day, and Zach left. We've got No Mike Nate with us now, but he's joining us today because No Mike Nate couldn't be here. So great to see you, Zach, man. No Mike Zach today.
No Mike Zach.
Yeah, you're listening to the Beer Guys Radio Show. We do need to take a break, but we'll be back very soon with more Ironshield Brewing.
It's great to see our community coming back to life. The cold weather is fading away, and it's time to enjoy the greatest patio in Kennesaw. Join us at the Nest and spend some time with family, have a beer with a neighbor, or simply celebrate the end of another day. Make a reservation at thenestkennesaw.com for Sunday brunch and enjoy an overloaded Bloody Mary. At the Nest, you'll find smiling faces, great barbecue, and 48 taps of local craft beverages. Don't forget, our outdoor space is perfect for your four-legged best friend. We look forward to seeing you soon at the Nest.
The most award-winning brewery east of the Mississippi has come to Atlanta. Iron Hill Brewery and Restaurant is now serving in Dunwoody at Perimeter Mall and in Buckhead on Peachtree near Phipps Plaza. Serving a variety of menu items from a completely scratched kitchen plus craft beer brewed 10 feet from your table. You have to try their cheesesteak egg rolls paired with a signature craft beer. Iron Hill Brewery and Restaurant, serving Atlanta in Buckhead and Dunwoody. Drop in today or make a reservation or place a pickup or delivery order at ironhillbrewery.com.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Boy, that escalated quickly. I mean, that really got out of hand fast.
Now, back to the Beer Guys Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys Radio Show. I want to give a quick shout out to one of our great radio affiliates, KENN 1390 AM and 92.1 FM in Farmington, New Mexico. Catch Beer Guys Radio and KENN every Saturday at 10 p.m. Now let's get back to Ironshield Brewing.
Brian, I've got a new mug of beer.
You do,
yes. It's actually a mug. It's a tall mug.
Very tall.
Glenn, is there a fancy name for this type of mug?
It's called a Maximilian.
That is fantastic. I have a Maximilian of Seven Sisters Vienna-style lager over here.
It's the gladiator of glassware, I think.
I'm down. I am down. Glenn, I wanted to ask you a term that you hear a lot, core styles, core lineup, core beers. I know at one time a brewery may only have 3 or 4 beers, and that was it. They were done. Yep. They had that core lineup. How important is a core beer or core lineup to a brewery today?
If you're a brewery that has made their reputation on their beer, then a core lineup, a core group of beers is still extremely important. You know, we've got so many breweries that you go in and they've got 20, 25 taps in their tap room, and it's all their beers. And a lot of them are beers that they may never brew again. A lot of them are beers that they, like our seasonals may only have on once a year. But if you're going to survive on your beer, if you're going to be known for your beer, if that's what people are going to talk about, you're going to have 2, 3, or 4 that are going to be the core styles people are going to talk about. And think of all the local breweries here. They may change over time because, again, your clientele, your customers, your fans are going to determine what your flagship is, not you. When Terrapin first opened, it was a rye pale ale.
Right.
It's revolutionary.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it went several years here in the last few years and weren't even making it anymore. It became Hopsecutioner.
Yeah, that's right.
Sweetwater's got their 420.
Yeah.
And we've got our Seven Sisters. So I think it's kind of like your stake in the ground that tells people what you're all about.
And I think folks should know Seven Sisters is 3 breweries and 25 plus years old, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. So as we talked about earlier with Glenn, with Phoenix in 5 seasons, this beer has went with him there. So that's a core beer. Now, when you go from brewery to brewery over decades, that's a core beer, Brian.
It definitely is. And as you were saying, this happens to be what we are drinking currently.
It is right now in the Maximilian.
So do you anticipate with the core beers, it's very trendy to go new releases constantly, or just not even have core beers. Do you think that's going to fade? It seems trendy now. Is there going to come a time where people just get tired of that and I want just something basic and predictable?
People get tired of everything. If they're exposed to it long enough and they're hit with it often enough, they get tired of everything. I've been asked the question even by people that work here that are, let's say, a couple of 3 decades younger than us.
Right, it happens. It happens.
What are you going to do to remain relevant? What are you going to do to be relevant? And my belief is that if you're going to stay in a business long term, whatever business it is, you create your relevance, and you do that by doing something very well. And taking care of the people that are your customers, your fans, and making sure they're getting what they believe in. And so that's a little bit hard in today's trendy world that we live in.
Sure. Yeah.
But you can still do it.
I think we're making, I won't say it's a massive shift, but there's a little bit of a shift back to that now. There are people looking for a classic lager, looking for a beer they can depend on, that they can count on, and we're probably the worst customers in the world when it comes to beer, because I'm going to drink 2 of this beer and then 2 of that one and 2 of this when I'm going from brewery to brewery to brewery, trying them all. But there's places, one place not far from our studio that I love to go to is Halfway Crooks. Mm-hmm. And I go down there and they're doing these classic styles, much like you are. Mm-hmm. Go down there, sit down. I don't have to overthink the beer. I don't have to look for the notes and the tones it's just a good classic beer that I can sit down and I can have a few. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be laid out after a few of them and have a conversation with my friends, know? And I think more people are starting to appreciate that now, where maybe even 2 or 3 years ago, a lager brewery, we've had a few around for a few years, but they were really taking a risk then. I think it's less of a risk now to say, we're doing lagers, we're doing classic styles.
Right. So, and I have nothing against IPAs. I brewed IPAs. We brew IPAs for several of our contract customers. If we ever brew one that really takes off, I'll be very proud of it. Doesn't matter if I formulated it or Jason or Brian or one of our other guys. But we have seen over the years that people keep coming back to these styles. It's like Jason, our lead brewer, says, and this is directly from Cork, Ireland. He says, everybody's got to have a local.
Yeah, that's right.
Can't argue with that, man. Can't argue with that. Yeah.
Where you can be part of a family, where you can be part of a community. It's almost the same with the beer. As you mature, you start finding there are things you just like, that you would like to stay around and you would like to continue to enjoy. You can go to 20 different restaurants in a month, but after a while, there's certain 1 or 2 that you're really going to want to go back to over and over. And we like to think that that's what we're doing with our beers.
And whether it's a brewery or a restaurant or whatever, if you're a customer that you walk into that restaurant and they're like, number 2, or something like that, you're like,
the usual?
Yeah, the usual. Can I get you the usual? When you can go up to the bar and say, let me get a beer, and they know exactly, or you don't even have to say it. You walk in there and there's a pint on the bar waiting for you. It's norm. Everybody cheers when you're coming in. There's comfort in that. There's community. There's comfort in that. It's having that cheers bar to go in and sit down. Everybody knows your name. They know what you drink. It's nice.
Right.
Because, boy, you go in and they've got 37 smoothies that were different last week. They don't know what to give you. There's no telling what you'll get there.
Well, you know what? I do have some places trained like, our newest thing on tap is this. Would you like to try it? Right. They know I'm kind of coming in because, again, probably the worst client ever. But I come in. I am frequently looking for the new thing. But I do fall back on certain beers that I will drink over and over and over again, especially at home. But you were mentioning IPAs, and you do brew them for other people. Have you brewed any for Ironshield at all?
Yes, we have. We did a New England style hazy IPA.
Did you?
As a seasonal. We did it last year, and very juicy, very low IBU. The great thing about having such an automated brewing system is we know all the numbers. So we know exactly what the outcome is, and we can design it for the outcome and hit that target 99% of the time. So, it was a good beer. But again, if you're going on the shelf and you're competing with 42 other New England IPAs, and keep in mind too that those are some of the most expensive beers to brew on earth. The amount of hops
that
have gone through. And we're not talking $5.95 a pound hops. We're talking $15 and $20 a pound hops that are in shortage now. And people are throwing hundreds of pounds in the fermenter.
Yeah.
So out of curiosity, are there traditional styles of the IPA? Because you went very modern with that. Is there like a traditional, perhaps English style of IPA that maybe you'd consider brewing on a more regular basis? Or is that?
Yeah, I have.
Is there? Okay.
I have, and I love them. We haven't brewed it because, all market indications are nobody's interested in the traditional English IPA.
Oh, okay.
English barley wines, yes. English IPAs, no. So
there's some really good ones out there, though.
Sure. You know what?
I
don't know that
I
I've
just
had
don't
that
get
many.
in your face.
Now that you mention, now that we're talking about it, I see what you're saying, Glenn, because I couldn't name a single English IPA right now.
There was one on the market that I enjoyed, and I can't remember who made it, and it's been several years since I saw it or had it, but I appreciated it. I really can't think of what it is, but I thought about it when we were doing the research for the show. I'm like, I haven't seen like a kind of an English IPA or like any kind of a traditional IPA in ages.
Well, Fuller's did one called Bengal Lancer, and
I know
there
the
were a lot of
name.
local English pubs that carried it for a while.
Okay, all right.
We had, I know we've seen cask ales. Do you do any cask ales here, Glenn?
We are starting. We did a cask version of our Nitro Stout.
All right.
We're going to do some other casks as the year goes by. We're going to do a face-off. Jason and I are. We're going to take and split an Imperial Stout, and he's going to do his half one way, and I'm going to do my half
Those are
another
always
way.
fun.
And we're going to cascade them.
What are you going to do with your half?
Infuse it with a little coffee and throw it in a Woodford Reserve cask for about 3.5 months.
Oh, Brian's already picked his winner.
I'm on board. You win. Unless he puts more coffee into his, maybe. Or maybe if he goes more coffee and does rye, he might win. But I think I'm siding with you already.
We are about to take a break here. When we come back, we're going to dive a little deeper into Hefeweizens. We're going to talk that. That's the hot topic today. So you are listening to the Beer Guys radio show. We do need to take a break, but we'll be back right after this. Cobb County, Georgia is home to 19 great breweries, distilleries, meaderies, cideries, and wineries. This March, Cobb Travel and Tourism brings you Bubbles and Brews Craft Beverage Month. Visit participating locations and get your Brew Pass stamp, sample unique brews, and win sweet prizes all month long. Make sure to get double stamps on Bubbles and Brews event nights and vote online for your favorite brews. Celebrate with Cobb's best craft beverage makers throughout the month of March. Get more info now at bubblesandbrews.com. It's Brian and Tim, the Beer Guys. If you're like us, no lunch or dinner is complete without a pint or two of craft beer.
Which is why Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and Duluth are always on our list. Tim, why do they call it Truck and Tap?
Well, the tap part is easy, Brian. They've got 18 of them.
As for the truck part, that's where it gets interesting. Truck and Tap features your favorite Atlanta area food trucks, so you're getting a different menu every day.
Truck and Tap in downtown Woodstock, Alpharetta, and Duluth.
Truckandtap.com. Let them know that the Beer Guys sent you.
Follow the Beer Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
What in tarnation?
Now, back to the Beer Guys radio show.
Welcome back to the Beer Guys radio show. If you enjoy the show, please consider supporting us on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/beerguys. Patrons get cool perk like Beer Guys swag and commercial-free episodes. Now let's get back to Ironshield Brewing.
So, Glenn, I want to make a comment on a couple of the beers that we've drank here. We've had your Lorelei Hefeweizen, and we've had the Seven Sisters here. And first of all, I've had my beer now 15 or 20 minutes. I'm about halfway through. Still has head on it, so good head retention. And it was thick and creamy until I started drinking it. And very excellent layering as you drink down the glass. So nice beer, clean glassware. I don't think everyone pays enough attention to that. No. The technically proper brew, you get good head retention in there, and having that beer clean glass is just makes for a nice experience.
I just keep enjoying watching the bubbles go up. The
light
carbonation
cascade there, right?
Was it a nucleated
is
bottom
there
of the glass?
Nucleation
Yeah,
point
I believe
there?
so.
Okay.
There is.
Yeah, all right.
Does it say Ironshield on the bottom, or does it just say
the core of our shield, which is a phoenix.
Oh, okay.
Phoenix.
All right. Oh, yeah, I see it kind of outlined in bubbles in the bottom. That's pretty neat.
I don't think we've asked this yet. Ironshield Brewing, where's the name come from, Glenn?
It actually comes from a lot of places and formed into one name. First of all, all breweries tend to want to support causes. It's a good thing to do to be part of your community. and we support veterans, first responders, and law enforcement. I come from a family with a lot of law enforcement and veterans in it, and so that's who are the people that we choose to support in the communities. And if you think about it, those are our shield. Those are the people who protect us every day, whether we know they're there or not. And those are the people that make the sacrifices. The other side of it is, if you look at the history of beer, much different than wine. One person used to say that wine was known as the drink of lovers and beer was the drink of conquerors. If you look at back into Europe and back into the 10th century, 11th and 12th century, a lot of the warriors at that point in time were warrior monks. They had one
warrior
other thing.
Monks. That sounds oxymoronic, doesn't it?
It does, but when you think about it, they were protecting a lot. At the same time, those warrior monks were also very self-sufficient. They made their own beer, and they often traded that beer for goods that they needed from the communities that they were in. And plus, when you're traveling, the water's not always safe, right? So beer is a good bet. So there's a lot of history, from the martial side of the shield and the brewing side. And we look at it too, is that when people went from using wooden shields to using metal shields, the art of warfare changed. The art of warfare changed because the guys holding those shields were coming home, and those guys could stay in the saddle longer and fight longer. What we're doing in the beer world is, with the technology that we use to brew, is we're trying to take craft brewing to that next level. That level of consistency and quality that you would expect from any local small German brewery or any local small Belgian brewery who had been doing the same thing with high precision for centuries.
Plus, if you were in a battle and you were carrying an iron shield and you survived and went home, you're going to want a beer, Glenn.
Yeah,
absolutely.
If you were just on the battlefield, you'll want a beer.
I'd want one before I got it the whole way home,
Both.
So
couple
it's the
before
beer,
you head out, couple when you get home,
couple while you're fighting. It's the beer that's coming home. That's what I'm
beer
here.
That's coming home. Glenn, let's talk a little bit more about Hefeweizen just in general. We talked about your Lorelei, which is releasing officially today. When this show comes out, it's the release. It's time to party there. So Hefeweizen, they had a big popularity in the 90s, but I haven't really seen a resurgence or come around. Why do you think that is?
Hefeweizen is a unique tasting style. It's not easy to make. So not very many small breweries really take an honest run at it. They'll take a halfway run at it because it requires some complexity in the process. It requires a lot of time, and it requires being able to watch things very closely. If you do something once a year, and to do it exactly the same time every year is very difficult. And if you look at the history of Hefeweizen, it has gone through that yo-yo effect in its popularity a lot since, let's say, 13 or 1400. It almost ceased to exist at the beginning of the 20th century, in the early 1900s.
No, really?
And it was brought back from the brink by a gentleman in Germany with the last name of Schneider. And now his brewery is one of the most famous Hefeweizen breweries in the world.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that one, yes.
I've heard of those guys.
And then it almost died again in the 60s, and then it came back in the 90s. And then with the advent of IPAs in the craft brewing industry, people kind of got away from the traditional styles again, and it kind of faded a little bit. But to people who really know the classic styles, a Hefeweizen is something to search out. And if it's done right, and if it's done well, it's definitely worth the search.
So you mentioned something about the complexity. I'm curious, what makes Hefeweizen a little bit more complex than brewing some other styles that people might do?
To begin with, if it's a true German Hefeweizen, by German law, it has to be more than 50% wheat in the grist. Wheat has no husk like barley. So when you start making the beer, you go through a process called the lautering process. That is extremely difficult with a beer that's more than 50% wheat. It would be like your drip coffee maker not draining the coffee, but having the coffee be caught up with the grounds and never coming out.
Oh, like a stuck mash. I remember that from home brewing. Yeah, so and that's a real consideration and problem for a production brewery.
Right. The second reason that they're difficult is that wheat contains a significant amount of protein, and as you all know, protein is not a friend of beer in general unless you use it in exactly the right way. So to use a high protein grist, you have to be able to have a multiple temperature mash with what are called protein rests to break down the high molecular weight proteins into simpler proteins that aren't going to damage your beer. On top of that, With the traditional German Hefeweizen, most of them are secondary fermented, and the secondary fermentation process sometimes takes place at an elevated temperature and quite high a pressure. And most of the tanks in most small breweries will not withstand that pressure. Plus, they have no way of heating the tanks rather than just cooling them so that they can kick off that secondary fermentation process.
What does that do, that secondary fermentation?
Well, basically, most beers, when they finish fermenting, we age them at cold temperatures and they're done. Well, in a lot of the Hefeweizens and in the Belgian ales, then they were put into bottles, and because that was their only way to distribute them, and they wanted them to stay healthy in the bottles, so they added a little unfermented beer and a little more live yeast, sealed it up, and let them go through a secondary warm fermentation that would protect them in the bottle by getting rid of oxygen, by creating the natural carbonation that they wanted, and by having some live yeast in there to make sure if there was anything else alive in there besides yeast, it couldn't take over. And that secondary fermentation also had the benefit of adding some neat new flavors to that beer that wouldn't have been there without it. The esters that create aromas and flavors, like in the Hefeweizen, clove, banana, bubblegum, a little bit of buckwheat in the aftertaste. All that is a byproduct of secondary fermentation.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that at all.
I didn't realize that much went into it. I do know when we homebrewed a Hef, that's one of the most active yeast I've ever used. I mean, it just went nuts.
Yes, it's aggressive.
Excellent. So,
how about some Maibach?
Yeah, let's get into the Maibach.
Warhammer Maibach. That's going to be your next seasonal release.
That's
correct?
the next seasonal. We do it every year. I've done it every year since I've been brewing. It is between 7.5% and 8% ABV. It is a golden bock. It looks like our Helles, but it ain't.
Surprise.
We introduce it at the 1st of May of every year. We have our own version of, the Germans would call it a strong beer fest. And so we do that at the beginning of May. This year, we're launching it on Saturday, May 7th. It's a big party. It's the second biggest party we have in the year, aside from, obviously, Oktoberfest. And if you are a German beer lover and you love big malt and you love a very bracing beer, this is definitely one to enjoy. And it's our most barbaric celebration.
Are you flirting with me, Glenn? Because it kind of sounds like you might be there.
So barbaric. So the beer itself is barbaric, or the celebration?
The celebration.
Okay.
Warhammer is more than a beer. It's a character, and we're going to develop the character. And you can see some of the posters of Warhammer in the brewery. We have keg throwing contests, axe throwing contests, stein holding contests. And it's one of those times you just go here to celebrate life.
Keg throwing contests?
Yes.
I'm assuming they're not
full kegs, Brian. Yeah. Full kegs.
That's like I don't know if I could even pick up a full keg. I mean, it's a little yeah. I might be able to get it to move a few feet. So when can we expect to see that? You said, was it like the beginning of May?
The beginning of May, and it will run probably through June.
It seems like German beers, you play a lot in the seasons, but I guess that's the classical brewing. You kind of had to do that, correct?
That's right.
Awesome. Glenn, thank you so much for joining us, man. We've really appreciated it. You sharing your beer, your brewery with us out here in the beautiful beer garden. If people want to find out what's going on here at Ironshield Beer, what's the best way for them to do that?
First and foremost, www.ironshieldbrewing.com. And all the contact information is there. We're on social media. Since I'm such an old guy, don't ask me the social media questions, but all of that stuff is posted on the website as well.
Follow on the socials, man. They'll be there. Awesome. Glenn, thanks again. We were really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. I'm glad to have y'all.
That about wraps it up for this episode of the Beer Guys Radio Show. Join us next week as we talk to Denver's Flight Co. Brewing Company. For more craft beer info, follow us online. We are Beer Guys Radio on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks again for tuning in. Have a great week, and don't forget to drink local. Cheers.